Welcome to the HIC Sheltered Pit training for the 2019 reporting year. We will start by going over the agenda. So the agenda for this meeting is to cover the summary and goals of the HIC and PIT, and then we will review the HIC PIT data collection and submission process, and hopefully this part of the training will allow you to know exactly what you need to turn in, as well as which data you need to collect and how to collect that data. Then we will get into the details of the HIC and PIT training. We will first cover the HIC, which includes going over the changes to the 2019 HIC and then reviewing the HIC Answer Form. Then we will cover the PIT, and we'll go over the changes for this year, and then review the PIT report and the Answer Form, which are different this year. We will finish up the training by going over reminders of important dates and information. So first off, for the summary and goals, we want to give everybody an idea of what the HIC and PIT are for people who have not participated in the HIC and PIT process before. So the HIC is like an inventory of beds and units that are available to homeless clients in Orange County. It stands for the Housing Inventory Count, and it collects information about all of the beds and units in each continuum of care homeless system, categorized by project type. And we only report beds dedicated to serve homeless clients on the HIC. The PIT is like a census of all persons experiencing homelessness in Orange County. It stands for the point in time count, and it provides a count of sheltered and unsheltered homeless persons. The PIT includes population data such as number of households and persons, as well as subpopulation data such as how many of these clients suffer from mental illness or are considered chronically homeless. So HUD requires that the HIC and sheltered PIT counts be conducted annually for each COC. So we're conducting this training to hopefully guide you in successfully completing the HIC and PIT process. And the goals of this training are to review changes to the 2019 HIC and PIT, learn how to correctly report beds for the HIC, and understand which clients should be counted on the PIT and what data should be collected. So we'll now go over the data collection and submission process. In terms of the HIC, 2110C will send the 2019 HIC Answer Form with your agency's 2018 HIC data in an Excel format by the end of this Friday. So the purpose of this is to hopefully help make the HIC data collection process easier for you. Since the 2019 HIC Answer Form will have all of your finalized data from 2018, you'll be able to just review that data and go over to see if there are any changes or updates you need to make. And in terms of the PIT, we have two different processes depending on whether or not your agency or projects are HMIS participating or not. For projects that are not HMIS participating, you will be downloading the 2019 PIT Answer Form, which is in an Excel format, from the OCHMIS.org HIC Sheltered PIT page. And you will be using the instructions in this training to help you fill out the forms. If your project does participate in HMIS, this year we have 2 reports that you will be turning in as your PIT report. If you have a safe haven, transitional housing, or emergency shelter entry exit project, you'll be turning in the 2019 Sheltered PIT Client Data Report. If you have an emergency shelter project that is night by night entry type, you will be turning in the 2019 Sheltered PIT Client Data ES Night by Night Projects Report. So we want you to look over this report and familiarize yourself with the required fields so that by the time of the PIT count, you know which data you need to collect and are able to submit a report that has valid responses for all those fields. So we're going to continue on with the HIC and PIT data collection and submission process. So this year, 2110C will send you an invitation to a Dropbox folder for your agency, and we will send that to you by the beginning of next Monday. And the purpose of that is that we wanted to find a way that is easy for you to submit your PIT reports, but also protect the client level data that you will be submitting with those reports. So this is an easy way for us to receive your materials and protect the client level data that will be in the PIT submissions. And next Tuesday on 1/22/2019, you will be collecting data for the HIC and PIT as of that evening. Then by January 25th at end of day, you should submit all of your HIC and PIT materials to 2110C via Dropbox. However, we still need to know whether or not you have submitted those materials. So we ask you to submit an HMIS help desk ticket to notify us that you've submitted all your required materials via Dropbox. So we have a checklist of all the forms and sheets that you need to submit to hopefully guide you in your submission process. If your agency has at least one transitional housing, emergency shelter, or safe haven project, you will be submitting the following materials. So whether or not your projects are HMIS participating or not, you will be submitting a HIC cover sheet, a HIC answer form, and a PIT cover sheet. And then depending on whether or not your project is HMIS participating or not, you'll be submitting one of the following PIT reports. So if your project does not participate in HMIS, you'll be submitting the PIT answer form. If your project does submit in HMIS and is either an entry-exit emergency shelter project, a transitional housing project, or a safe haven project, you'll be submitting the 2019 Sheltered PIT Client Data Report. And if your project does participate in HMIS and is an ES Night by Night project, you will be submitting the 2019 Sheltered PIT Report that's specifically for that type of project. If your agency has multiple types of projects, you might be submitting a combination of these 3 PIT reports. So it just depends on whether your project is participating in HMIS or not and the type of project it is. So you will gather all of those forms in the stated format and upload them to Dropbox and let us know that you have done so by submitting a ticket. If your agency only has rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, or other permanent housing projects, then you will only need to submit the HIC cover sheet and the HIC answer form, and that's whether or not your projects participate in HMIS. Upload them to Dropbox and let us know that you have submitted them. So now I want to review the Dropbox process for this year. So we will be doing a demo of what that looks like. So you will be checking your email and notice that you received an email from 2110C asking you to that we want to share your agency's folder with you on Dropbox. So you click Go to Folder, and this will open up a web page where you are asked to create an account. So your email should already automatically be pre-filled out. So you just need to fill in your name, your last name, a password, agree to the Dropbox conditions, and click Create an Account. So this will send you to a page that asks you to install Dropbox to be able to get the agency folder on your computer, but you don't need to install Dropbox, so you want to bypass this web page by typing in dropbox.com in your web browser and clicking Enter. So this should take you directly to your Dropbox account, and you will see that your agency's folder is located in your Dropbox account. So go ahead and click on your agency folder. And now you will have the option to upload files to your agency folder. So if you click the Upload Files link, you'll be able to browse your computer for the HIC PIT materials that you need to turn in for the year. So in this example, this agency needs to turn in their HIC and PIT cover sheet, their Sheltered PIT Client Data Report, so that's for their HMIS participating project. And then they have 2 non-HMIS participating projects, so they're turning in 2 PIT answer forms, and then their HIC answer form. So you can actually select them all at once and click Open, and they will then be uploaded into your agency folder, and that is the submission process for this year. So after this, you would just send us a ticket to let us know that you've done that. So in addition to this, I want to show you where the HIC Sheltered PIT page is, because that page, you will be using that page, and I'll be referencing that page a lot during the training. So if you go to the OCHMIS.org website and you hover over the HMIS help title in the banner, and then click on 2019 HIC and Sheltered Pit. You will be sent to the 2019 HIC and Sheltered Pit page. So I'll be referencing this page a lot during the training. It has all the information and forms and guidance that you need to be able to complete this process. So for example, it'll have a list of the important dates, and then we have all of our forms, like the HIC Cover Sheet, the HIC Answer Form, the PIC Cover Sheet here. And then we have our training slides, and once this webinar is completed, we'll have the webinar here as well, and any of the resources that you need to be able to complete the training. So those are all located there. And I also want to show you how to submit a ticket that you will be using to notify us that you submitted your HIC Pit materials. So on the same website on ochms.org, you will see a button on the right-hand side that says HMIS Help Desk. So you just click on that button and then click Submit a Ticket. You'll select the HIC Pit category and just type in your subject and message here and your information. Let us know that you submitted your forms. So that is the process for submitting materials this year. So now we're going to go over the HIC. So first and foremost, there's the HIC Cover Sheet. The HIC Cover Sheet should list all of the projects included on the HIC. And this sheet must be signed by your executive director in pen, so no electronic signatures are allowed. And that is because the HIC Answer Form is meant to certify that, the HIC Cover Sheet is meant to certify that everything on the HIC Answer Form is correct. And you should submit this HIC Cover Sheet whenever you submit your HIC Answer Form. So this is what the HIC Cover Sheet looks like. You'll just be filling out this information, filling out the name of all the projects that are on your HIC Answer Form, having it signed by your executive director, and then you can scan that and send it to us as a PDF. So now we'll be going over the HIC Answer Form. So the HIC Answer Form should be completed for all residential projects dedicated to serve homeless clients at your agency. You'll be entering data into the yellow fields. There's also gray fields on this form, but the gray fields are formulas that are automatically calculated for you, so please do not alter those fields. And then if your agency participates in HMIS, you should report each of your projects, each of your residential projects, and so do not combine projects. For example, if you have 5 projects, you should be filling out 5 or more rows on the HIC Answer Form. So this is what the HIC Answer Form looks like. If you have completed the HIC Pit process before, this might look familiar to you, but there have been some changes to the 2019 HIC, and we want to go over those so that you're aware. So the changes for the 2019 HIC. The first change that applies to all projects is a change for question 5, target population. So the response options for target population have been reduced to only HIV, DV, or NA. And then there is a change that applies to only DV projects. So on question 15, location zip code, HUD has clarified that they encourage domestic violence projects that serve domestic violence survivors to provide a zip code associated with their project location. So although victim service providers do not have to provide an address, HUD would encourage the project to provide a zip code that is associated with their project. Then there's also been a change to the housing type, question 16, and this applies to all projects. So HUD just wants to clarify that if your project has more than one housing type, for example, if the project is both site-based and tenant-based, it should be reported as 2 different projects. So if it's reported as 2 different projects, that means it should also be reported on 2 different rows on the HIC Answer Form. And that's only if your project has 2 housing types. And then another change is a change to question 17, inventory type, and this also applies to all projects. So the response options for inventory type have been reduced to only current or under development inventory. And we're going to cover these changes as well as we go through the HIC Answer Form, but that's just an overview of all the changes for the 2019 HIC. There's also a change that is not a change to the questions being asked, but a change to the way that you calculate the data that you report. So there's a calculation process change, and that is regarding questions 20 through 23, the bed inventory section of the HIC Answer Form. So please pay close attention to when we go over questions 20 through 23, the bed inventory section, as there has been a change in the calculation process. So now we're going to go over each question that's on the HIC Answer Form, and I will just let you know how you can respond to each of these questions. So the HIC Answer Form starts off with questions used to establish if the project should be reported on the HIC. So the primary intent of the project, asks if the project's primary intent is to serve homeless clients. And 2, eligibility determinants, asks if the project verifies homeless status as a part of eligibility determination. So these are either yes or no questions, and they're a drop-down, so you either select yes or no. And if the answer to both of these questions is no, the project should not be included on the HIC. If the answer is no, if answer to any of these questions is no, we will contact you for further information into whether or not the project should be on the HIC. And the reason for this is because, as we mentioned earlier, the HIC only wants to know about beds and units that are used to serve homeless clients. So we want to know if this project serves homeless clients specifically. So the first question is project name. If your project participates in HMIS, then you should type in the name exactly as it appears in HMIS. If your project does not participate in HMIS, the name that you report here should match all your grant applications. Next question asks the project type of your project. So I'm not going to go over the definitions of these projects, but it's here for you as a guide and reference. So you can go over the training slides or this webinar if you need further assistance. But your project is either one of 7 project types. It's either emergency shelter, transitional housing, safe haven, permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, other permanent housing with services, or other permanent housing only. So you should know what your project type is. You can look over these definitions if you need further clarification, but your project type should also be on your grant applications and on your HMIS project setup form. So I think everybody should be okay with that. Then we also want to know if your project receives any HUD McKinney-Vento funding. And examples of that type of funding are Continuum of Care or COC funding, or Shelter Plus Care or S+C funding. And we also want to clarify that you should only report funding, the funding source as it is on the night of the HIC. So for example, some Shelter Plus Care or SRO and SHP funding have been renewed under COC funding. So you wouldn't report SC, SRO, or SHP. You would report the COC funding because that's how it has been renewed and used as of the night of the HIC. So I want you to select all of the McKinney-Vento funding sources that apply, and if none apply, you can just leave this blank. Then we also want to know about your other federal funding sources. So if your project receives federal funding from any other source, we want to know the federal funding source should be selected even if it only funds part of the beds and units in the project, and you should select all federal funding sources that apply for the project. And if you do not receive any other federal funding source, you can just leave this blank. One of the options in the dropdown for this question is other. So if you select other, please let us know which funding source this is in the notes section of the HIC Answer Form, just so that we can ensure that that funding source is a federal funding source. So here's an example of the federal funding sources. So examples of that are SSVF, BCP, and HOPWA. So next is target population. So the target population means that this project is intended to serve the population that you select from the dropdown, and at least 75% of the clients served by the project should fit that target group descriptor. However, we want to emphasize that you should only select an option from this dropdown if your project is intended to serve that population. So if it just so happens that you often have 75% of your project clients fit the descriptor of people who have survived domestic violence, but your project isn't intended to serve domestic violence survivors, then you should leave this field blank. So you should only select an option here if your project is specifically intended to serve a target population. And you should also only select one target population. For voucher projects, this information should be entered based on the population targeted in the project's grant application. So these are the three options for target population: either DV, people who are survivors of domestic violence; HIV, persons with HIV/AIDS; or NA, not applicable. Then we want to know about the HIC contact information. So this is just in case we have any questions about the data that was reported for the project. So you want to know the information for the person who is completing the HIC answer form for that specific project. And there may be different contacts for different projects. For example, sometimes there is a HIC answer form that has 5 different contacts because 5 different people filled out the information for the different projects in that agency. And the date information is being collected is the date that the HIC answer form is being completed for the project. Then we want to know the geocode associated with the geographic location of the principal project service site. So the geocode is a number, but you don't need to know the numbers. The numbers will be associated with the city or geographic location that you'll see in the drop-down here. And scattered site housing projects should record the geocode where the majority of the beds are located. So for example, if you have a project that is made up of 2 houses and one house is located in Garden Grove and the other is located in Anaheim, and the Anaheim house has 50 beds and the Garden Grove house has 20 beds, then you should select the geocode associated with Anaheim because the majority of this project's beds are located in Anaheim. If the geographic location is not on the geocode list or beds are evenly distributed in Orange County, you'll just choose the Orange County geocode. Then we want to know information about the project's locations. So you'll report the address associated with the project where most of the project's beds are located. If your project is scattered site housing type, then you should just report the administrative office address. And then again, this is one of the changes to this year, is that HUD would like to clarify that DV providers should not enter address information, but are encouraged to enter a zip code associated with their project. So then we would like you to identify which housing type your project is. Your project is either one of 3 housing types: site-based single site, site-based clustered multiple sites, or tenant-based scattered site. So site-based single site projects are those that only have one physical location. Site-based clustered multiple site projects are those in which all clients are housed in more than one project facility, but more than one client is housed in each project facility. And the facilities locations are owned, operated, or sponsored by the project. And then tenant-based scattered site housing type are those where the clients have leases or other occupancy agreements and are housed in market rate scattered site residences. So that's often the housing type option chosen for rapid rehousing. Then we want to know the inventory type. So this is another one of the changes to the 2019 HIC. You will either select from current inventory, which means that the beds and units were available on the night of the HIC, or under development, which means that the beds and units are fully funded, but they're not available yet as of the night of the HIC, January 22nd, 2019. And then we also want to make a note that if you have units under construction, you should report these as under development. So for example, if you have some beds and units that are not available because the unit is being repainted, then you would report the unit and the beds for that unit as under development instead of current inventory. So then we want to know what the inventory start date is. So this is the date when the bed and unit inventory information first applies. And this could represent the date when a change in household type, bed type, availability, or bed inventory or unit inventory occurs. So oftentimes, the inventory start date is the same as it was last year. So you could just review the data that we have sent to you in your 2019 HIC answer form and make sure that that's correct. Unless there has been a change, so then you would update that information. And for seasonal beds, this reflects the start date of the seasonal bed inventory. So that should change at least a year. For the inventory start date should change every year because that's depending on the start date of the seasonal bed inventory. And then for under development beds, this should represent the first date the beds are available. So if you have a new unit that's fully funded and you expect it to be available in April 2019, you would enter April 2019. Then we ask for the inventory end date. So this is the date when the bed and unit inventory information as recorded is no longer applicable. So this would be the day after the last night when the record is applicable. And this could be due to a change in household type, bed type, availability, bed inventory, or unit inventory. So basically, if there's been any change, if there will be any change to the information that you provide for the household type, bed type, availability, or inventory, and you know when that change is going to take place, then you would provide that as the inventory end date. However, oftentimes there is not an end date to the inventory, so that can be left blank. And for seasonal beds, it should reflect the projected end date for the seasonal bed inventory. Okay, so now we're going to get into where the calculation process changes for the bed inventory. But first, I want to just describe what the household types are. Because as we mentioned on the HIC, you report beds based off of household type and project type. So for questions 20 to 23, you will be reporting beds for households with at least one adult and one child. So these are beds intended for households with at least one adult and one child, and you're usually beds that are intended for families. Then there are units for households with at least one adult and one child. So these are units intended for households with at least one adult and one child, and this should be the number of families that can be housed by the project at one time. Then beds for households without children. So these are beds intended for households with adults only. And this includes both households composed of unaccompanied adults and multiple adults. Then there are beds for households with only children. So this is where you will report beds for households composed exclusively of persons under age 18, including one-child households, multiple child households, or other household configurations composed only of children. And we just want to make a note that crib and overflow beds should not be included in these numbers. So if you have any cribs and overflow beds, do not report them in questions 20 through 23. So now we're going to go over the new calculation process. And so starting this year, agencies will now report the same number for these fields every year unless there is a change in the number of units or vouchers that are available. So if there's units added or removed for the project, or vouchers added or removed for the project. And the reason why we want to have the same number reported for questions 20 through 23 year after year is because it creates a standardized HIC process. And this gives the COC a clear picture of the county's bed inventory. So there is an exception, and the exception is rapid rehousing projects. So we're going to be going over the rapid rehousing process for reporting beds at the end of this section. But first we want to go over the way that you will be calculating beds and getting at the same number year after year. So for projects that serve families, projects will be multiplying their number of units by the project's average family size to determine the number of beds for the project. So I want to go over how to do this if your project is HMIS participating. And you'll see this article mentioned often. It's the Running and Saving an OC Clarity System Report article. And that article is just going to give you an overview of how to find a report, how to run a report, and how to save a report mentioned here. However, we will also be doing a demo of how to do that. But just to go back to how you will be getting at the number of beds for question 20 and for projects that serve families, what you do is you will be multiplying the project's average family size by your number of units. So you're going to be running the 2019 HIC average family size data report, and you will get a report return that looks like this screenshot here. So if you see in this screenshot, they have the OC Training Agency Non-Federally Funded Permanent Supportive Housing Project. And this project serves families. And this project has an average family size of 4. So since this project has 2 units and an average family size of 4, you'll multiply 4 by 2 to get 8 beds. So if you see here in the red box, the average family size is 4, and then this project has 2 units. So then on question 20, they're filled 8 in their HIC Answer Form. And then in 21, since they have 2 units, they reported 2. So I'm going to show you how this looks in HMIS, and this will be the same process for running all the reports that are mentioned during the training. So after logging into HMIS, you will click on the Launchpad icon and then click on the Reports main page. You will click on the Data Analysis tab. And then all of the reports for the HIC and PIT are located under the Orange County Training Systems header. So click the header, click the caret next to that header, and you will see the HIC and PIT section of these reports. So I'm going to go ahead and run the 2019 HIC Average Family Size Data Report, because that's the report that we're going over right now. So all you have to do is click Run next to the name of the report, and this will return data only for your project, only for your agency, sorry. And you shouldn't have to edit any of these filters. You will just be able to see all the information that you need here. And the only report that you'll have to download is the PIT report. So I'll show you how to do that now. What you'll do is click on the gear icon and then click Download. And we want the PIT report in Excel format. So here under File Format, you'll select Excel. And then it's important to select all results here under Limit. If you don't select all results, it will not return everything, all of the information for these parameters. It will only return what you've seen in the table. So make sure to select all results under Limit and then click Download. So then that will be sent to your Downloads folder. So that's the process for running the reports that we'll be mentioning during this training. Now let's continue with the calculation process. For questions 22 through 23, projects that serve individuals, projects should report the amount of beds available for occupancy on the night of the HIC and PIT, whether or not the bed is occupied. And so this is the process for households without children or households with only children, questions 22 and 23. And if your project serves both families and individuals, you'll be combining the previous two methods. If your project is a permanent supportive housing voucher or VASH project, you should report the number of beds based off of the number of bedrooms in the unit following the below criteria. So if your unit has 0 beds, you report 1 bed. If your unit is a 1-bedroom, you will report 1 bed. If your unit is a 2-bedroom, you will report 2 beds. And if your unit is a 3-bedroom, you will report 4 beds. So for example, if the project has 3 2-bedroom units for households with children and 3 2-bedroom units for households without children, they should report 6 beds in question 20 and 6 beds in question 22. So you see here on question 20, we typed in 6 in the HIC Answer Form, and then since they had 3 units, they typed in 3 for question 21, and then since they have 3 2-bedroom units, and 3 times 2 is 6, they typed in 6 for question 22. So since the bedroom is 2 units and 2 bedrooms is associated with 2 beds, then 3 times 2 is 6 beds. So hopefully that is clear. And then we just wanted to make a couple notes. So as we mentioned, the HIC asks for the inventory of beds and units available to clients, but some projects also have services only aspects of their projects. So for example, the VA Supportive Services for Veterans Families or SSVF program may offer both homelessness prevention and rapid rehousing assistance. But we want to make note that SSVF funded agencies should not include persons receiving SSVF homelessness prevention services on the night of the HIC. So we only want you to include persons that are receiving rapid rehousing assistance. And the same goes for RI Basic Center Program projects. So BCP projects also they offer emergency shelter and homelessness prevention services. However, BCP homelessness prevention services should not be included on the HIC or the PIT. And then we also have a special note for projects serving runaway and homeless youth. COCs must exclude beds that are dedicated for persons who are wards of the state, including children who are in foster care or who are otherwise under government custody or supervision. So if the beds are not specifically dedicated, then the COC must prorate beds based on the use of the night of the count or prorate beds based on the average utilization. So this is because we only want to know which beds are available for homeless clients. So for example, if your project has 8 beds and 4 are usually safe for foster care use and 4 are for homeless clients, then you should only report 4 beds. You should only report the beds that are intended to serve homeless clients. So now we're going to go over the exception to the same number year after year rule. So rapid rehousing projects should count rapid rehousing beds and units based on the actual number of current project participants who are, 1, actively enrolled in the project on the night of the inventory count, including persons who are only receiving supportive services in the rapid rehousing project, and 2, no longer homeless and are in permanent housing on the night of the inventory count. So that means that rapid rehousing projects should report beds and units based off of the clients enrolled in the program on the night of the HIC PIT, 1/22/2019, who also have a housing move-in date before or on the date of 1/22/2019. So that means that this number will be changing every year, most likely, because the number of clients enrolled and housed on a night is just dependent on how many people you have in your program and how many people you're able to house on that night. So now we're going to go over the instructions of how to get the information that you need to calculate the beds and units so you'll report. So this is the rapid rehousing instructions for HMIS projects. You're going to be following the instructions on that KB article to get to this report. You're going to click Run next to the 2019 HIC Rapid Rehousing Data Report, and you will receive a report output that looks like the screenshot down below. So as you see in the screenshot, the information is grouped. It's grouped by, at the very top, in the very top row by household type. So it's households with children, households without children, and households with only children. Then underneath that, there's the labels for what these numbers are. So it shows you the number of clients and the number of households. So now I will explain how you will use this report to answer questions 20 through 23 on your HIC Answer Form. So for question 20, beds for households with at least 1 adult and 1 child, you will use from the report, the households with children section, the number of clients number. So if you look here on the report in the red box, under households with children, under number of clients, there's 6. So in question 20, they typed in 6. And then for question 21, units for households with at least 1 adult and 1 child, you will be using the households with children section, the count of households number. So if you look here on the screenshot of the report, households with children, enrollment count households, the number on the report is 3. So in question 21 on the HIC Answer Form, they typed in 3. And for question 22 in the purple box, beds for households without children, you will be using the households without children number of clients number on your report. So if you look here on the report in the purple box, there is like a strike through. So that means there are 0 clients for that household type. So on the HIC Answer Form, they typed in 0. And then for question 23, beds for households with only children, you'll be using the households with only children number of clients number on the report. So if you look on the report in the blue box, there's another strike through so that means that there are 0 of these types of clients housed on that night. So you will report 0 on question 23, if you see that on the blue box. So that's the end for the calculation process change. So now we're going to just continue on with the questions on the HIC Answer Form. So the next thing that we want to know is your bed and unit availability. So your beds are either one of 2 types of availability. So they're either available on a year-round basis or on a seasonal beds. So seasonal beds is for emergency shelters only, and that means that those beds and units are not available year-round, but instead are available on a planned basis with a set start and end times during an anticipated period of higher demand. So for the HIC, you identify only the total number of seasonal beds available for occupancy on the night of the inventory count. Then we want to know, so then there is a gray field. So this field will total your year-round and/or seasonal beds. So it'll just add up your answers based off of questions 20, 22, and 23. And then we want to know how many overflow beds are available, and this should only be answered for emergency shelters. So if your project is not an emergency shelter, you do not have to answer these questions. And it asks about the number of beds that are available on an ad hoc or temporary basis during the year in response to demand that exceeds planned year-round or seasonal bed capacity. And for the HIC, you will identify the total number of overflow beds that were available for occupancy on the night of the inventory count. If there is no fixed number of overflow beds, you may instead report the number of overflow beds that were occupied on the night of the inventory count. And then we have one of the gray fields that automatically calculates the number for you. So this will automatically calculate the number of total overflow beds by using the information that you typed in on questions 26 and 28. Then we have another gray field which will automatically calculate the total bed inventory that you have. So this is a gray field on the HIC Answer Form, and it counts up based off of your responses to questions 25 and 29. Then we want to know whether or not your project participates in HMIS as of the night of the HIC pit on 1/22/19. So for the purpose of reporting in the HIC, a bed is considered an HMIS participating bed if the project makes a reasonable effort to record all universal data elements on all clients served in the bed and discloses that information through agreed upon means to the HMIS lead agency at least once annually. Then we have a question that's for emergency shelters only. We want to know what your bed type is. So it is either one of three bed types: facility-based, voucher, or other. So facility-based beds are those that are located in a residential homeless assistance facility dedicated for use by persons who are homeless. Voucher beds are located in a hotel or motel and are made available by the Homeless Assistance Project through vouchers or other forms of payment. And then other bed types are those that are located in a church or a facility that's not dedicated for use by persons who are homeless. So now we're getting into a subsection. So these questions are asking for more detail about how those beds that you reported in 20 through 23 are used. So 33 through 35 asks about your chronically homeless bed inventory, and this is a section that should only be answered by permitted supportive housing projects. So 33 through 35 asks for the number of PSH beds that are dedicated to house chronically homeless persons, including members of the chronically homeless families. And these are dedicated beds. So a dedicated bed is a bed that must be filled by a chronically homeless participant unless there are no chronically homeless persons located within the geographic area. So if you do have dedicated beds, that's most likely going to be on your grant. So you should look on your grant to see which number you have selected as being dedicated specifically to chronically homeless clients. And since 33 through 35 is a subsection of your total bed inventory, this should be less than or equal to the total beds in your project. Then there's a gray field that will sum your responses to 33, 34, and 35 and just tell you the total chronically homeless bed inventory that your PSH project has. Then we have another subsection which asks for your veteran bed inventory. So this is the number of beds that are dedicated to house homeless veterans and their families. So again, dedicated beds are beds that must be filled by homeless veterans and their families unless there are no homeless veterans and their families located within the geographic area. And since this is a subsection of your total bed inventory, this should be less than or equal to the total beds in the project. Then we have another gray field that will sum your answers to questions 37 and 38 and tell you your total veteran bed inventory. Then we also want to know if any of your beds are dedicated to youth. So 40 through 42 asks for your youth bed inventory. And just as a definition, youth are persons under age 25, including children under age 18 and young adults 18 to 24. So these questions will ask for the number of beds that are dedicated to house homeless youth, including parenting youth and unaccompanied youth. And this does not include children in households with adults 25 and over. And again, a dedicated bed is a bed that must be filled by a homeless youth unless there are no homeless youth located within the geographic area. And since this section is a subset of your total bed inventory, it should be less than or equal to the total beds in your project. Then we have a gray field that will sum your responses to 40, 41, and 42 and tell you your total youth bed inventory. And if you do select that you have youth inventory, we want to know if those youth beds are dedicated to serve a specific subset of youth. So we want to identify if the beds are dedicated to serve only children under 18, only persons 18 to 24, or persons up to 24. So that means that it's both children under 18 and persons 18 to 24. Then we have question 45, explaining differences from last year's HIC. And we're hoping that in the future there will be less information here unless there is an addition of vouchers or units, because we want to have the same number reported for questions 20 through 23 year after year. But question 45 is a place where you will provide an explanation of why there is a change in bed inventory, why it was different from last year's HIC. So also, if your project is new and was not included on the 2019 HIC, you can provide an explanation here. And the bed inventory information reported by your agency on the 2019 HIC will be sent to you by 2110C in the form of the 2019 HIC Answer Form. So you'll be able to easily see what you reported last year, and if you report something different this year, you can provide an explanation here on question 45. And then the 2018 HIC is also available on the 2019 HIC and Sheltered Pit page that we mentioned, that I showed you earlier. So if you want to look at it in a different format, you can also go on to that webpage and then download the 2018 HIC. And then I just wanted to make a special note about RRH projects. As we mentioned, the beds and units for RRH projects are always changing because they're based off of active clients. So in question 45, you can provide an explanation for this change by noting that beds reported on the HIC for RRH projects are based on active clients housed on the night of the HIC. So now we want to know about your active clients. So this asks how many clients were active in each of the household types below on the night of the HIC pit, and that is active clients and persons and active clients of persons and households with at least one adult and one child, active clients and households without children, and active clients and households with only children. So I'm going to go over the process to find out the number of active clients if your project participates in HMIS. So for HMIS participating emergency shelter, safe haven, and transitional housing projects, you will be clicking run next to one of these reports. So if your project is an emergency shelter entry exit project, a safe haven project, or a transitional housing project, you will use the 2019 HIC active clients THES-SH report. If your project is an emergency shelter night by night project, use the 2019 HIC active clients ES night by night report. So after you click run next to that report, you will receive a data output that looks like the screenshot here. And you will basically just be copying over the information from the report into your HIC answer form. So for example, in the top row on the report, you see that the COC funded transitional housing training project has 2 under the category households with children, clients, number of clients. So on question 46, they put in 2. And then for households without children, that project has 1 on the report. So for question 47, they typed in 1 on the HIC answer form. And then on the report for households with only children, the number of clients, the report says 1. So for question 48, on the HIC answer form, they reported 1. So it's pretty straightforward. You'll just be running the report to see the active clients for these projects. And if your project is a rapid rehousing project, the numbers on questions 46 to 48 should match the numbers on questions 20, 22, and 23. And I will show you an example of that at the end when we go over non-HMIS participating projects. But if your project is a permanent supportive housing or other permanent housing project, including voucher projects, you will be using the 2019 HIC active clients other PSH OPH report. And the process is the same as what we just covered. You'll run the report. You will look under each household category and then type in the number to the corresponding question on your HIC answer form. So for example, This COC funded PSH training project. It has strike-throughs for households with children and households with only children on the report. So for questions 46 and 48, they typed in 0 on their HIC answer form, but they do have 2 for households without children on the report. So for question 47, they typed in 2. If your project does not participate in HMIS, you should pull the data from your database to see which clients were active on the night of the HIC pit. And then, as is the case for RH projects that do participate in HMIS, these numbers on questions 46 through 48 should match the beds that you reported for 20, 22, and 23. So I just wanted to show you an example of how you do that. So as we discussed, the beds that you report on the HIC are based off of your active clients that are housed on the night of the HIC, so these numbers should match. So for question 20, there were 3 beds reported for households with at least 1 adult and 1 child. So that means there were 3 active clients in this type of household. So you see that in question 46, it also says 3. So the red box here, 3 matches 3 on both parts of this HIC answer form. And then the same is the case for question 22. For beds for households without children, there were 0 active clients housed on the night of the HIC. So for question 47, they reported 0. And in question 23, in the HIC answer form, they reported 0 beds. And for 48, they should also report 0. So these numbers should be corresponding. 20 should correspond to 46. The number in 22 should correspond to question 47, and the number that you report in question 23 should correspond to the number reported in question 48. So that is the end for questions 46 through 48. Then we have a gray field that will sum these numbers for you based off of what you responded to questions 46, 47, and 48. And this is just the sum of active clients in households with at least 1 adult and 1 child, households without children, and households with only children. And then we also just want to make note that for the ESTH and SH projects, these numbers should match the total number of clients on your PIT report or PIT answer form. And then the RH projects, this number should match your total year-round beds. So then there's another gray field that will calculate your bed utilization. So the bed utilization is just your active clients divided by your total bed inventory. So this is calculated based off of other calculated fields in the HIC answer form. It will just divide question 30 by question 49. So total active clients by total bed inventory. And then if your bed utilization is high or low, we would like for you to provide an explanation. So if your bed utilization is below 65 or above 105, please provide an explanation in question 51. We wanted to make note that if you click F9 on your keyboard while you have your HIC answer form open, it will update the formulas and rules on the HIC answer form and will highlight any issues in red. So hopefully that can help you fix any issues that are on your HIC answer form. So that's the end for the HIC answer form. And we are now going to go over the sheltered point in time PIT. So we'll do the same thing that we did for the HIC answer form. Cover the HIC cover sheet, and then also talk about each question on the PIT answer form. And we'll also talk about the PIT report. So again, we have a cover sheet that you will be submitting, and the PIT cover sheet should list all of your emergency shelter, transitional housing, and safe haven projects for your agency. And this sheet also needs to be signed by your executive director. It has to be signed in pen. We do not allow electronic signatures. And the reason is that this cover sheet, the use of this cover sheet is to certify that the reports in the answer form are correct, and it should be submitted with your PIT reports under PIT answer form. So just here's an example of what it looks like. So just have each of your project names listed here, whether or not they participate in HMIS, have it signed by your executive director, and then scan it and submit it with the rest of your materials. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the training, this year we have some changes to the PIT. There's no changes on behalf of HUD, but we do have changes to the type of data that's submitted. So this year for the PIT, you're only going to be submitting client level data. So in the past, you submitted reports that had summary data, or you submitted only summary numbers. But this year, we're asking you to submit only client level data. And the reason for this is because the client level data allows the county to create a unique identifier of the clients to deduplicate the count between the sheltered and unsheltered projects. So using this personally identifiable information, the county is going to be creating unique identifiers, and then they will use that unique identifier to make sure that no person is counted twice, that no person is counted on both the sheltered and the unsheltered counts. However, you will still receive summary numbers. So 211 OC will create the summary numbers from you based off of your client level data submission, and we will just contact you to ask you to confirm what you submitted. So this guide is going to introduce you to the new forms and reports and guide you in collecting the client level data. So first we'll go over the PIT report for the HMIS participating projects. So this is the new format for the PIT report. All HMIS participating projects identified on the PIT cover sheet should submit a 2019 sheltered PIT client data report, unless your project is an emergency shelter night-by-night project. So you will, if it is that kind of project, you will submit the report specific for that type of project. And this is what the report looks like. As you can see, it has client level data such as first name, last name, gender, age, date of birth, ethnicity, etc. And as we mentioned, we want you to, before the PIT count, run the report and familiarize yourself with the required data and enter valid responses to don't know, refused, data not collected, or missing responses in any of these fields. So if you run the report and you notice that you have a lot of don't know, refused, data not collected, or missing responses for these fields, please take the time to go into the clarity profile or the enrollment screens of those clients and update those responses to valid responses. So by 1/25/2019, when you submit your report, all required fields should have valid responses. And to submit your report, you will just run the report in HMIS and then download it as an Excel spreadsheet as we demoed earlier and upload that to Dropbox. So now we're going to go over the PIT Answer Form. So this is the PIT Answer Form is what you will use if your project does not participate in HMIS. So project identified as not participating in HMIS on the PIT cover sheet should complete the PIT Answer Form. This is what the PIT Answer Form looks like this year. So as you can see, it has all of these client level data questions, and it also includes 3 sample clients. So we're hoping that these 3 sample clients will help guide you in your data collection, and we'll go over some of those examples as we go over each question on the PIT Answer Form. So one thing that's important to note is that you should submit a separate form, a separate PIT Answer Form for each emergency shelter or transitional housing project at your agency. And you should also know that there are 2 forms of the PIT Answer Form. There's the electronic version and the print version. So they have the same exact content, but the electronic version is formatted specifically so you could enter data directly into it on your computer or on a tablet. And then the print version is formatted so that you could print it out and there's enough space for you to write data into it. And the electronic version has built-in drop-downs for response selections. And if you're using the print version, you should use the County of Orange Sheltered PIT Count Instructions, which has a comprehensive list of the response options and is available on that 2019 HIC and Sheltered PIT page. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So since the print version doesn't have drop-downs, you need this as a guide to let you know what your options are for responses. So you can use this as also a guide in data collection because it provides a little bit of information about how to collect data. But as you can see here, it also lets you know which response options you have, and it is detailed. So if you're going to be using the print Answer Form, please also print this out or have this available so that you know what are the valid responses. Okay, so now we're going to go over each question in the PIT answer form. The first question asked on the PIT answer form, the first section of the PIT answer form is agency information. We want you to provide your organization name, and then we also would like for you to provide your project name. And again, you're going to be filling out a separate spreadsheet for each project, not an HMIS, and to select the project type. Your project type is either emergency shelter or transitional housing. Then we have a section of PIT contact information for you to provide the name, phone number, and email of the person completing the PIT answer form for that project. And there may be different contacts for different projects. So if you have multiple spreadsheets for multiple projects, these may have different people, different contact information for different people. The next section is the section that will be used to create the client unique identifier. So this is the client unique identifier information section. The first question asks for the client's name, but you will not be providing the full name. You will be providing the first two initials of the client's first name and the first two initials of the client's last name. So for example, if your client is named Elizabeth Agredano, like myself, you will be providing EL for the first two initials of the first name and then AG for the first two initials of the last name. Then you are asked to provide the client's gender, and you select one of the following responses: female, male, transgender, or gender nonconforming. Then you are asked to provide the client's age in years, such as 1, 2, 3, or 4, etc. And then continuing on the client UID information section, you are asked to provide the client's ethnicity. So you will select one of the following responses, either non-Hispanic, non-Latino, or Hispanic Latino. Then you are asked to provide the client's race, selecting from one of the following responses: white, Black or African American, Asian, American Indian or Alaskan Native, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, or multiple races. And we want to make a note that you can, that multiple races is an option for people who identify as non-Hispanic, non-Latino. We often have for Hispanic Latino, we often have a lot of blank responses for these. So you should let your client know all of the race options, and it is possible that they would like to select multiple races if they are Hispanic Latino, but you can only report data based off of what your client identifies as. We just want to make a note about multiple races. That is an option for Hispanic Latino clients. And then continuing with the client unique identifier section, we want to know what state your client was born in. So you will provide the two-letter state abbreviation selected from the drop-down or from the appendix in the County of Orange Sheltered Pit County instructions. If the respondent was born outside of the U.S., you will select or write in other and then fill in the next column. So if you look at this example, we have two clients. In the top row, this client was born outside of the U.S. So for the what state were you born in question, they typed in other. And then for the country name, if outside of the U.S., they typed in the country they were born in. So we have the list of those state abbreviations inside of the County of Orange Sheltered Pit count instructions. So you don't have to memorize these. You can just use this appendix to find the state abbreviations. Then we have questions asking about the household status and size. The first question is a little bit tricky, so we want to go over it in detail. We need to know which clients are in a household together. So the first question is household ID. And this is an alphabetic group number. So a household is one or more individuals who present themselves to your project to live together. And we want to identify groups of people who present themselves to your project to live together and provide them a household ID in the form of an alphabetic group name as follows. So these are the instructions on how to create the household ID. So the first set of individuals who make up a group should be identified by the letter A. Thereafter, consequent groups should be identified alphabetically, so B, C, D, E, etc. If you so happen to have more than 26 groups in your project that are presenting to themselves to live together, you will provide a two-letter combination beginning with the letter A and the next letter in the alphabet as follows: AA, AB, AC, AD, etc. So if you happen to have more than 52 groups and you have already gone through A all the way to AZ, what you will do is you will provide a two-letter combination beginning with the letter B, following the same rules. So BC, BD, BE, etc. So you'll just continue in this fashion as necessary. I don't think it's likely that you'll have more than 52 groups, but if you do, you'll just continue in that fashion. And all members of the household should have the same household ID. So I want to show you what that looks like in case it's confusing. So let me open up the HIC Answer Form example. So this is the example that you're going to see when you look at the HIC Answer Form, and it'll just be there as a reference as you collect data. So here we have this set of two clients. They have the same last name, and as you see here, they have the same household ID. So that is because this is a family of a mother and her child. And since they are presenting themselves to live together in your project, they are one household, so they have the same household ID. Then we have this other client here who is by themselves, and they also have their own household ID. So that identifies which people are grouped together. So we're going to continue on with information asked of you under the household status and size section of this form. So we also want to know the number of persons in the household, so you'll provide the total number of individuals represented in the household, and also just note that households may contain only a single individual. And we want to know the number of persons under age 18 in that household, so provide the number of people in this household who are under age 18, and then also let us know the number of persons in that household who are 18 and older. So I want to show you the example again. So in this household, there are two people, so the number of persons in the household is 2, and you are going to be writing 2 in both of the rows. And then this household has one mother who's 13 and one child who is 14. So for number of persons under 18, there is 1, and number of persons 18 and over, there is 1. And this information should match for every member in the household. Then we also want to know what the relationship to head of household is for each of the clients. So you select one of the following responses. So this client is either the head of household, and they select self, or they're the head of household's child, head of household spouse or partner, head of household's other relation member, or other non-relation member. So now we have questions asking about the client's chronic homelessness status. So you will answer either yes or no to these 3 questions. So have you been living in the shelter and or on the streets for 1 year or longer, yes or no? Have you experienced homelessness at least 4 separate times in the last 3 years, including now? Answer yes or no. If yes, was the combined time 12 months or more? Answer yes or no. Then we would like to know about the client's, if the client suffers from any disabling conditions. These questions should be answered by adults only. So the header is, do you have any of the following long-lasting conditions that make it difficult to live independently? And this should be asked to the client in that way. Then the client should select yes or no for each of the type of disabilities. So serious mental illness or emotional impairment, physical disability, substance abuse disorder, developmental disability, diagnosed with AIDS or tested positive for HIV. Then we would like to know about subpopulations. So you should ask these questions to adults only. Have you served in the United States Armed Forces? And the client will select yes or no. Were you called into active duty as a National Guard or reservist? Yes or no. Are you currently experiencing homelessness because you are fleeing domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, or stalking? And the response options are yes or no. Then we have a section for local data. So the first question should be asked and answered by adults only. So it asks for adults' employment status. So you either select one of the following responses: full-time, part-time, seasonal, temporary work, unemployed, disabled, or retired. Then we have questions that should be asked of and answered by all respondents in the same section, the local data section. Prior to entering the program, what city were you living in? So if you're using the electronic version, you'll select the city from the dropdown. If you're using the writing version, just use the appendix from the County of Orange Sheltered Pit Count instructions. Then we also want to know in which city you were staying in on the night of the pit. So this city should correspond with the city of your project because they're staying in your project. You will select the city from the dropdown if you're using the electronic version, or if you're using the writing version, use the appendix in the County of Orange Sheltered Pit Count instructions. And we want to make note that DV providers may provide the SPA in which their project resides. So if you see here on the screenshot, all the way at the bottom on the electronic version, there's options that say DV only, so you can select if your project resides within the North SPA, the Central SPA, and the South SPA. And on the 2019 HIC Sheltered Pit webpage, there is a SPA list of cities PDF that you can use for reference. So I'll show you what that looks like. So this shows you the different SPAs and then which cities are associated with each SPA. So for example, if you have your project located in Ladera Ranch CDP, you would choose the South SPA. So that is the last question for the PIT answer form. So we're done going over all of the details of the PIT answer form and the HIC answer form and over the reports. So the last part of this training is just to go over some important information. First, we want to announce that there will be HIC revision open office sessions. So these office sessions will be scheduled for the end of February, early March, and it's an opportunity to get one-on-one help in finalizing your HIC answer form. So an email will be sent out announcing the open office hours and dates, and if you're interested, you can RSVP by submitting a ticket to the help desk and letting us know which time and date works for you. So we'll have more details on that coming up. However, we do not have revisions to the PIT data this year. That is because the submission uploaded to Dropbox on the 25th of January will be your final PIT submission. So although you cannot alter your PIT data, we can work with you to finalize your HIC answer form if needed through these HIC revision open office sessions. And then because the materials that you submit on January 25th are your final submission, we want to reiterate how important it is to go over the PIT report now, just to make sure that you have complete valid responses by the time of the due date. So now we'll finish up with just some important dates and informations. So Orange County will be conducting the HIC and PIT count on the night of January 22nd, 2019, so that's next Tuesday. And that's because HUD requires that the HIC and PIT counts be conducted on a day during the last 10 days in January. And then all data through January 22nd, 2019 should be entered into the HMIS, or the agency's comparable database, by January 25th, 2019 to ensure that the data is accurate for the sheltered pit count. HIC and PIT forms are due to 211OC by January 21st, 2019. And to submit the completed forms, you'll follow the link in your agency's Dropbox folder and then notify us by submitting a ticket to the help desk. And if you have any additional questions, you can submit a ticket to the help desk under the HIC PIT category. So 211OC will be working with agencies to correct the HIC and the PIT surveys through February and March, and hope to have all surveys finalized by April 1st. And all of the cover sheets, forms, PowerPoint slides, and guidance that you need will be available at the 2019 HIC and Sheltered Pit webpage, which is on OCHMIS.org. And I'll show you again where that is. If you go to OCHMIS.org and hover over HMIS Help, click on 2019 HIC and Sheltered Pit, and you will find all of the forms and guidance. So that is the end for the HIC and PIT training.